Welcome to the Athletic FC podcast with me, Akinwolere. Liverpool have lost their fifth game so far this season, the latest defeat against a rampant Manchester City. So, is their title defence over? All right, with us today, we've got Jack Pitt-Brooke in the studio. We've also got Adam Crafton, who's with us as well. Right, Jack, Pep Guardiola's 1,000th game, and Arne Slot actually said before the game, he had sort of the heat up there to be like an El Clasico. Did it provide that?
No, I don't think it did, because I think it was too one-sided. I thought that the City were just too superior for too much of the game. I think that over the years, particularly since it was, Guardiola versus Klopp, which obviously started when Guardiola arrived in 2016 to England, like these games have been really, really high quality, competitive and very, very evenly matched. And in this game, I didn't think it was evenly matched at all. I thought the City were just much better than Liverpool. They looked like scoring every time they went forward. Liverpool didn't really create anything apart from that disallowed goal. And it just it meant that it didn't have that kind of tension that you get when it's the two best teams in the country competing. Like everyone knows that Arsenal are the best team in the country. These two are not. City are a bit the way off Arsenal. Liverpool are probably further away. And it just didn't have that kind of competitive edge you'd normally associate with this fixture.
Yeah, Adam, City had less than 50% possession in that match. And we'll talk about Jeremy Doku later. But even if Liverpool did get that goal in, do you think that looked like a team that looked like getting something out of that match?
Well, City have been doing that in a few games this season. We can go back to quite a few, at least periods of games where they're far more happy to, go without the ball, I wouldn't go as far as to say sort of Antonio Conte style suffering, but it's not like it was 4 or 5 years ago where every Man City game is 65 to 70% of the ball. Liverpool, I mean, who knows, right? If you get a goal, sometimes it can change the whole complexion, but I don't think apart from that one moment that they just didn't look like doing anything, particularly in the first half. They looked sort of slow. They looked like quite an old team. Despite some of the players, obviously not being old, but I think particularly the defence looked really slow and old and tired.
Yeah, I mean, Jack, City's first goal felt like a Pep Guardiola goal of old. The fact that all those players touched the ball and then finally Haaland headed it in. I mean, are they finding their best again?
They're trying to find their old form again, definitely, but I think they're trying to do it in a new way. As Adam says, they're much less dependent on possession. They're very happy to have less than 50% possession. I think when they beat Bournemouth at home the other week, they did that with less than 50% possession, which never would have happened like even 3 years ago, never mind like 6 years ago. They've replaced probably the world's greatest ever footballing goalkeeper with a much more conventional goalkeeper. They've got a big number 9 who puts himself about. They've got a brilliant winger in Doku. So they've moved to a style which I think is it's basically more conventional. Like it's less distinctly Pep. It's less based around possession. It's more direct. It's more pragmatic. But he's decided that this is in the changing game, this is probably the best way to win games now.
Well, Arsenal's lead at the top of the table is now down to just 4 points after they drew 2-2 with Sunderland. Adam, we have to talk about Liverpool right now. Some people are saying they're out of the title race already. Too early to call?
Not the way they're going at the moment. I think for them it's just a case of they need to get some consistency back. It's weird because in many ways they had a good week. They had a really good week, to beat Villa, who are in really good form, beat Real Madrid deservedly, but they're kind of flimsy at the moment, and I didn't really expect them to do very much against City yesterday, and they didn't do very much. I think they're quite easy to play against at the moment. I know everyone's talking about their forwards, and clearly there are issues. Isaac's not started scoring, and he's got injury issues. But that, by the way, we all could have predicted because he's always had injury issues before. Wirtz hasn't got going at all, and maybe we'll talk about him a bit more. And Salah is really having a poor season, quite quiet season, but I still think there's so much quality in those players that you would think at some point that will start to make sense and come good. I think their problem is more at the moment in defence and the goalkeepers. I think since Alisson's fallen out of the team, they've got a lot poorer in terms of results and outcomes. And Konate has been poor pretty much from the start of the season this year. The fullbacks he can't get right. He's brought Robertson and Bradley back in, but yesterday I don't think Robertson had a particularly good game. The two new ones that they brought in, Kirkes has been what an amazing advert for Iraola's coaching in terms of someone who looks fantastic. When it's like remember that period where people would sign players from Brighton and then they wouldn't just play like they were at Brighton, or you'd get a coach from Brighton. It's a bit like that with Kirkes. You sort of put him in a different environment and he just doesn't look kind of up to it at all. So at the moment there's just so many question marks, and I think Slot had kind of fallen back on over this past week a bit more on things they did last season, but now even that's not working. So I think they're miles off Arsenal because they can't clean sheets often, with consistency. So I would have Arsenal and City way ahead of Liverpool at the moment.
Yeah, can we put Florian Wirtz into that category of being taken out of a specific setup and being brought into another one and not quite shining in the same way?
Yeah, he's clearly not doing at the moment what they paid the money for. He's very young. It's definitely a long-term investment. I do think it's a very difficult environment to go into for a player like Wirtz, simply because if you look at Liverpool, they're kind of, I thought at their best last season, they were a really effective platform for Salah. Basically, they had lots of, they had Salah and they had lots of other players who would operate in such a way as to create opportunities for Salah and to get him into good positions so he could score goals. And now for Wirtz and Ekitike and Isak, they've been bought for really big money by Liverpool, and so they're going to want to be the main man. They're going to want to have the chance to express themselves and show how good they are. But that's not really, that's like a bit of a cultural change, I guess, for Liverpool, right? Because if you're going in to dominate the game and take the initiative, that's not really the same as I'm going to go in and help Salah to get into good positions. And so I feel like at the moment they're in the real kind of transitional moment. It actually reminds me a little bit of Manchester City last season, right? In the sense that City won the 23-24 title with a really old team, and they basically got squeezing those last bits of energy out of players like Ederson, Walker, De Bruyne, and so on. And then the next season, as in last season, City just went off a cliff because all those players had kind of nothing left to give. And when I watched Liverpool a little bit now, I wonder whether the impact of having won the league last season with it's not an old team, but a team with some old players in it. And now you wonder whether they don't really have they're kind of struggling to find themselves again, aren't they, after that big high of winning the title?
Yeah, I guess this was always the conversation, Adam, is whether or not Liverpool could mount another title challenge this season. It's a new iteration of that team. But then I do think about what a coach like Pep Guardiola has done over the last few years. Jack's has spoken about squeezing the best out of an aging squad. In this current rendition of the Premier League and the amount of quality there are with the teams, can we just, for a moment, just applaud what Guardiola's done consistently to keep that team right up there?
Yeah, it's amazing, and that's why he is the best. He's been the best coach in the world for the past 15, almost 20 years now, and I don't think that changes until someone else goes and wins back-to-back titles. It was when Liverpool last won the league. I know it then entered kind of COVID period. But I remember Roy Keane saying they were bad champions, which is a pretty brutal thing to say. But actually, look at some of these players. It isn't an easy thing to go through. And I don't mean bad champions in terms of the season they won it, in terms of the season after. That ability to go again and maintain a level and keep standards and keep hunger, that's a really hard thing to do. And it's why, only City have been able to defend the title, I think, since since maybe Manchester United did it. As a result of that, I do wonder that about some of these Liverpool players, even some of the most senior ones, that it's not easy to sort of go back to the well and keep getting that energy and that desire. And so far, they've not proven that they're actually able to do that. I still think on Wirtz, I said this after the Community Shield podcast that we did, I just think he plays the game at a different tempo to how Liverpool should play football at their best, in terms of what we see as Liverpool at their best, which is fast and direct, and kind of quick and exciting. And I think he plays football like Man City did 3 years ago. And that's the bit which I think is going to be, although he's got this clear and individual quality, I just don't see how that is going to fix itself in a Liverpool team that still looks most dangerous when it is going kind of direct to someone like Mo Salah.
Is there an argument here, Jack, that Florian Wirtz could probably flourish at Manchester City versus how he's been asked to play at Liverpool, for instance, in terms of his style of play, for instance?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think his style of play would be. I mean, Pep would love him, obviously. And it's not really clear exactly how he fits in at Liverpool. Like, he's been on the left recently, but you do wonder if he was bought with the idea of being a 10. But would that be, like, if he's going to be a 10, how does that? It's kind of difficult to have a 10 and Salah, I think. Adam's right that, like, Liverpool traditionally haven't always played with a 10. Like, in the great Klopp teams, they had Coutinho and they sold him, and that was a great thing for them to do, because they could go to 4-3-3, they could get lots of money which they could spend on players who were more aligned to how they did want to play. And it's not really clear what Slot's idea is for fitting Salah, Wirtz, Isak, and Ekitike. No, that's the big question for this season. Nobody really knows what the answer is. It's November already. Maybe Salah being away playing for Egypt in January will provide a bit of extra clarity about how they're going to go about it. But for now, it all seems a bit of a muddle.
If City are to be a threat, Adam, we're still relatively unconvinced, but they're the closest anyway that we're seeing. What do they have to do? Is it just more consistency? Because actually, let's face it, Arsenal, we've seen capitulate when the pressure's on, really. And this is a team that know how to do it.
Yeah, I don't see Arsenal capitulating. I think if City are going to win the league, I think they're going to have to hit probably 93, 94 points, because I think Arsenal will get pretty close to that. If City carry on losing 3 games out of 11, as in their current points ratio, they won't win the league. So yes, they do need to be more consistent. They can't lose 9-10 games over the course of the season and win the title ahead of Arteta's Arsenal. So I still think, that gap, if this was to, if you were to kind of elongate what we've seen so far over the course of the season, then Arsenal are winning the league by 10 to 12 points minimum. So City, I think there's kind of been games where you've watched them and thought, ooh, like something could happen there, whether it was the opening day, I think it was against Wolves. Obviously, Wolves have turned out to be something else entirely, but the way they beat Man United, the way they beat Liverpool yesterday, their performance at Arsenal, where they came very, very close to winning that game, and actually that equaliser now for Arsenal, which, at the time people were having a go at Arsenal saying, they should have won this game. That point now looks massive. When you look at the table. So I still fancy Arsenal strongly. City would have to they'd have to be pretty much perfect in many ways for the next 10 to 15 games.
Arsenal have been here before, 23 season. City, miles behind, and City ate up those points very, very quickly. Is there still a psychological edge to this Manchester City in terms of you don't want to be the team that they're chasing?
Yeah, maybe. It's a really interesting question. Like, I think that, so this City team is probably less experienced than that City team, right? They've brought in quite a few new players who maybe don't have the same winning experience. And while this Arsenal team has not won anything together, I do think that the experience of the last sort of 3 or 4 seasons especially will probably put them in good stead for if it gets very tense during the title run-in. I just think Arsenal are fundamentally better than City. I think they've got more depth, more to them. I think City are very brittle because they're so City are miles more dependent on Haaland than Arsenal are on any one player. And I think that has to be a positive for Arsenal. But yeah, that particular question about the mentality and the experience and how that comes into play in the second half of the season, that's definitely going to be a really interesting topic.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, let's see if Haaland stays fit for the rest of the season, because I can't think of anyone else really that's going to be as prolific as him up front for Manchester City. Now, right, before we go, Adam, it's time for the final whistle. Over to you. You've got 60 seconds to tell us what's been on your mind from the world of football this week. All right, 3, 2, 1, off you go.
Okay, so do we all need to apologise to Frank Lampard? Is Frank Lampard actually a really good manager? We saw him do well at Derby, obviously struggled and did okay at Chelsea for a little bit, but obviously Everton was a difficult experience. But what he's actually doing at Coventry at the moment, where he went into a club where I think when he was hired and Mark Robins was moved out, there was a lot of people who thought that was harsh on Mark Robins. But they're now 15 games in the Championship season, 1 defeat. They beat Stoke, who were second or third over the weekend late on. And they're now, how many points? 7 points clear of third place at the top of the Championship. And Coventry, who we've not seen in the Premier League since 2001, I think, when you look at how poor the relegated teams have been in the Championship this season, it's an amazing opportunity. Even sold, I think, their captain to Wrexham as well in the summer. So, yeah, fair play, Frank Lampard. Sorry, Frank Lampard.
Yeah, we all owe Frank Lampard a bit of an apology. Do we owe Frank Lampard an apology?
Yeah, I think so. I think I really love how well he's done at Coventry. I love it for him. I also love it for Coventry City as well, because they've had a pretty miserable time of it. Well, for a long time. Losing playoffs, all the stuff with the stadium, but they're really on the right track now. And what I really love about it, for a few reasons, for Lampard, I love it that everybody was really skeptical when he took over from Mark Robins, right? Because Robins had done so well, and a lot of people thought it was unfair to sack him, but Lampard has confounded that. What I love about it for Coventry is that generally this is a bit of a generalisation, but generally in the Championship, if you're going to do well, you need either parachute payments or a documentary or a kind of oligarch, like a kind of oligarch owner, or one of those things to give you the extra edge. Whereas as far as I know, Coventry City they certainly don't have parachute payments. They've not been in the Premier League for ages. They don't have a kind of suspicious owner pumping tons of money in, and they don't have a gimmicky documentary. So it's all based on Lampard being a good manager, good recruitment, good coaching, and I'm really, I'm enjoying watching how well they're doing this season.
Yeah, thoroughly.
It's also just the difference in terms of what they're doing relative to the rest of the division. Like, only 2 other teams have scored more than 25 goals. They've scored 40 goals this season. So they are just way outperforming the division at the moment. And it is amazing how bad the relegated teams have been as well. You look at kind of Ipswich are getting a bit better, but I mean, Southampton are a disaster. Leicester have been really poor, and the two documentary boys, Wrexham and Birmingham, have been pretty meh so far. So I mean, there'll never be a better chance for a team, whether it is a Coventry, a Middlesbrough, a Preston, Hull, Millwall, to just go and do that without parachute payments.
Our video editor has basically said Southampton have actually won back-to-back games finally, so we've got to give them.
Well, they are. We can tell our video editor they are still 17th in the Championship, with probably one of the most expensive squads in the league. With love to the video editor.
With love, Liam. With love. All right, let's leave it there, gents. Appreciate your time, Adam, Jack. Thanks for joining us. Also, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave us a comment as well. We'll be back soon. For more from the Athletic FC podcast, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. We've got top journalists like David Ornstein, Matt Slater, Adam Crafton, Carl Anker, and plenty more through the entire season. Make sure you don't miss an episode of the Athletic FC. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts from.